Somewhere right now, while you are watching this video, there is a creature on our planet whose venom is so monstrously concentrated that 1 milligram, less than the weight of a single grain of salt, is enough to kill 10 adult men, not in hours, in minutes. And this creature doesn't hide inside a volcano or lurk at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. It lives in places where people go every single day, where they vacation, where they swim, where they pick things up simply because they look beautiful. Today we are going to meet 8 of them. 8 living chemical laboratories that evolution has been perfecting for millions of years. 8 of nature's answers to the question, how do you survive in a world where everything wants to eat you? And the 8th on our list, the one I just described, is not a snake, not a jellyfish, and not a spider. It is something so unexpected that when scientists first uncovered its secret, they checked their results 3 times. Because according to every known law of biology, something like this simply should not exist. Let's go. Before we get to the 8th, and trust me, you are going to want to stay for that one. We need to start at the beginning. We need to understand what venom actually is, because the word gets thrown around loosely, and the reality is far stranger and more fascinating than most people realize. Venom is not simply poison. Poison is something that harms you when you touch it or swallow it. Venom is a weapon, a biochemical system that has to be actively delivered, injected, introduced into the body of another animal through a bite, a sting, a spine, or a scratch. The difference matters because it tells you something about the animal that carries it. A venomous animal is not just toxic, it is armed. It has a delivery system, a targeting mechanism, and a payload engineered by millions of years of trial and error to do maximum damage to a specific type of biological target as quickly as possible. What we are talking about today is not an accident of chemistry. It is a weapon, and in some cases, it is the most sophisticated weapon on Earth. There are approximately 200,000 species of venomous animals known to science. 200,000. They range from microscopic jellyfish larvae that can sting through surgical gloves to giant Amazonian centipedes capable of taking down a bat in mid-flight. They live in every ocean, on every continent, in every climate, from tropical rainforest to subarctic tundra. And the astonishing thing, the thing that keeps toxinologists, the scientists who study venoms, genuinely excited about their field, is that we have fully characterized the venom of perhaps 2% of those species. 2%. The other 98% are carrying biochemical libraries that we have never read, compounds that could be the next generation of painkillers, cancer treatments, blood pressure medications, or compounds so lethal they make everything we currently know look mild. We are, as a scientific community, standing at the edge of a vast, dark continent of chemistry. And today, we are going to explore 8 of its most extraordinary landmarks. Let's start in the ocean. Specifically, let's start off the coast of northern Australia and the Philippines, in warm, shallow, crystal clear water that looks like paradise and, for the unwary, can become something else entirely in the space of a single heartbeat. The box jellyfish, known to scientists as Chironex fleckeri, is a creature that seems almost impossible. It is, to be blunt, something that evolution probably should not have been allowed to make. It drifts through coastal waters like a translucent ghost, a pale gelatinous cube roughly the size of a human head, trailing up to 60 tentacles behind it, each one up to 3 meters long. You can see right through it. When sunlight catches it in shallow water, it almost looks pretty. And that is exactly, precisely, completely the problem. Each one of those 60 tentacles is lined with millions of microscopic structures called nematocysts, biological hypodermic needles, coiled under extraordinary pressure, waiting to fire. When something brushes against them, they discharge in under a millisecond. That is not a metaphor for speed. 1 millisecond is genuinely measurably faster than the human nervous system can register that physical contact has been made. You cannot feel it before it fires. By the time your brain has processed the information that something touched your leg, the venom is already in your bloodstream. And what that venom does in the next 4 minutes is one of the most violent biochemical sequences in the animal kingdom. The venom of the box jellyfish attacks on 3 fronts simultaneously, which is itself extraordinary. Most venoms specialize, targeting one physiological system for maximum effect, but Chironex fleckeri apparently decided that was insufficiently ambitious. It destroys skin cells directly at the contact site, causing immediate catastrophic tissue death that leaves wounds so severe they can require skin grafts weeks later. At the same time, compounds in the venom attack the cardiovascular system, specifically the membranes of heart muscle cells, causing them to become permeable to calcium ions in a way that triggers immediate, catastrophic cardiovascular collapse. Blood pressure drops. The heart goes into arrhythmia. And simultaneously, neurotoxic components begin attacking the nervous system, triggering pain responses so overwhelming that victims who have survived near-fatal stings have described the experience as feeling like being burned alive from the inside while simultaneously drowning. Without treatment, cardiac arrest from a full-body contact with an adult box jellyfish can occur in as little as 4 minutes. Over the recorded history of coastal Australia and Southeast Asia, box jellyfish have been responsible for a conservatively estimated 6,000 human deaths, but marine researchers have noted consistently that this number is almost certainly a significant undercount. Many deaths attributed simply to drowning in affected waters, particularly in the Philippines, Indonesia, and northern Australia, were likely box jellyfish fatalities, where the victim was paralyzed by cardiovascular shock, lost consciousness, and sank before anyone could reach them. In the Philippines alone, between 20 and 40 people die from box jellyfish stings in an average year. These are not rare accidents. This is a recurring, documented public health crisis in coastal communities. And the animal causing it doesn't hunt. It doesn't pursue. It drifts on the current, responding to contact with the same automatic biochemical response, whether the thing that touched it is a small fish or a human being. One adult box jellyfish carries enough venom to kill approximately 60 adult humans. 60. One animal the size of a basketball, drifting silently in vacation water. And here is something that should reset your understanding of scale. The box jellyfish has not 1, but 24 eyes, organized in 4 clusters around its bell, with sophisticated lenses and retinas. It can see. It navigates around obstacles. It has been observed actively avoiding objects in its path. For an animal with no brain, no centralized nervous system at all, just a nerve net distributed through its body. The box jellyfish processes visual information in ways that continue to baffle neurobiologists. How does an animal with no brain see? How does it process what it sees? We genuinely don't know. The box jellyfish has been swimming in Earth's oceans for at least 500 million years, longer than fish have existed, and it is still keeping secrets. But the box jellyfish does not stand alone in the ocean's hall of extremes. There is a cousin, smaller, quieter, and in several specific ways even more insidious, that has generated some of the most extraordinary medical case reports in the history of emergency medicine. Reports where patients, in full possession of their faculties, in no danger of imminent death, begged intensive care physicians to put them into induced comas, not because they were confused, not because they were psychotic, but because the pain was so absolute, so completely beyond any scale of human experience they had previously encountered, that unconsciousness seemed like the only rational response. The Irukandji jellyfish is the collective name for approximately 16 species of tiny box jellyfish, found primarily in Australian coastal waters, but increasingly documented in tropical oceans worldwide, whose bodies rarely exceed 2.5 centimeters across the bell. You could hold one in your cupped palm. you'd barely feel the weight. The sting itself is the first deception. It's almost painless. A tiny prick, a small red mark on the skin, nothing that would alarm you. You'd brush it off, you'd keep swimming. And then approximately 20 to 30 minutes later, with a precision that doctors describe as almost clockwork, Irukandji syndrome begins. It was given its own medical name because what it produces is so distinctive, so specific, and so catastrophically severe that it demanded classification. Excruciating muscle cramps throughout the entire body, with particular concentration in the lower back. Patients describe it as feeling like their spine is being slowly crushed in a vice. Nausea and vomiting severe enough to cause dangerous dehydration within hours. Sweating so profuse that bedsheets are soaked within minutes. Blood pressure that spikes to levels associated with acute stroke risk. Heart rate and rhythm disturbances. And then overlaid on all of this physical catastrophe, a psychological component that appears in virtually every documented case, and that physicians have struggled to categorize cleanly. An overwhelming, absolute, unshakable conviction that death is imminent. Patients call it a feeling of doom, not anxiety, not fear. Certainty. A bedrock, cellular certainty that they are about to die. Some patients have died. From cerebral hemorrhage caused by the extreme hypertension, from cardiac complications, but the majority survive, and the reports they give afterward are some of the most remarkable documents in emergency medicine, because they describe the psychological component, that crushing sense of impending death, as persisting even after patients have been told they are stable, that their vital signs are improving, that they're going to be fine. The venom apparently does something to the nervous system that generates this experience directly, independently of the actual medical situation. It manufactures despair at a biochemical level. And the truly alarming thing about Irukandji jellyfish? The thing that keeps Australian marine safety officials in a state of ongoing concern is that their range is expanding. As ocean temperatures rise, these animals are being documented further south along the Australian coast, in Hawaiian waters, in the Caribbean, in the Red Sea. A creature that was once largely confined to northern Australian waters is quietly, steadily extending its territory. And because it's essentially invisible, transparent, thumbnail-sized, drifting just below the surface, there is no reliable way to detect one before it reaches you. Now, we leave the ocean for a moment and travel to inland Australia, to the flat, heat-baked channel country of southwestern Queensland, where red dust and dry scrub stretch to every horizon, and summer temperatures regularly exceed 45 degrees Celsius. Almost nobody lives here. The landscape is one of the most remote and inhospitable on Earth, and moving through the grass somewhere in this vast silence, with a speed that continues to astonish researchers who study it on video, is the inland taipan, Oxyuranus microlepidotus. The animal that holds the undisputed record for the most toxic venom of any snake species on Earth. A record that has been measured, tested, replicated, and confirmed so many times that it is not seriously disputed by anyone in the field of herpetology. A single bite from an inland taipan delivers enough venom to kill 100 adult men. The lethal dose, the LD50, the amount required to kill 50% of a test population, is so low that researchers initially questioned their own measurements. The venom is approximately 180 times more potent than the venom of a king cobra, which itself can kill an elephant. It is 50 times more toxic than the common Indian cobra, which kills tens of thousands of people every year. What the venom contains is a complex, precisely calibrated cocktail of neurotoxins that block neuromuscular transmission, shutting down the connection between nerves and muscles, combined with myotoxins that directly destroy muscle tissue and hemotoxins that prevent blood from clotting, ensuring that internal bleeding, once started, cannot stop. Without antivenom, a full bite causes complete respiratory paralysis and death in as little as 45 minutes. The snake is between 1.5 and 2 meters long, olive to dark brown. It actually changes color seasonally, becoming darker in winter to absorb more heat. And it strikes with a speed and accuracy that has been described by researchers who've worked with it as genuinely startling, even knowing it was coming. And yet, and this is one of the most persistent, most profound ironies in the natural world, the inland taipan has never confirmed killed a single human being. There have been bites, a small number of documented cases, almost all involving researchers or reptile handlers in controlled settings who made mistakes. Every single one of those people survived because antivenom was available and administered promptly. The inland taipan is not an aggressive animal. It is, by the behavioral standards of venomous snakes, remarkably reclusive. It lives in one of the most uninhabited places on a continent that is itself largely uninhabited. It avoids human contact with every tool available to it. The most lethally venomous snake in the world would, given a choice, simply rather you didn't exist in its vicinity. The contrast with some of its relatives, the common taipan, the eastern brown snake, species with significantly less toxic venom, but far more aggressive temperaments and far greater overlap with human populations, is a reminder that danger and venom potency are not the same equation. Speaking of dangerous, let's talk about a spider. There are 45,000 known species of spider, and the genuinely reassuring news is that the overwhelming majority are harmless to humans. Their venom is tuned for immobilizing insects, not for threatening animals 100,000 times their size. But the Sydney funnel web spider, Atrax robustus, exists in a category entirely its own. It is the only spider on Earth whose venom has been specifically, definitively, and repeatedly proven capable of killing healthy adult humans, reliably and quickly without treatment. Not theoretically. Not in edge cases. Reliably. And it shares its range with one of the most densely populated cities in the southern hemisphere. The Sydney funnel web is found within roughly 160 kilometers of the Sydney Central Business District, in suburban gardens, under houses, in garages, in garden beds, in the pile of shoes left by the back door. It is jet black, heavily built, with a body up to 3.5 centimeters long and large, downward projecting fangs capable of penetrating fingernails and soft leather. When threatened, it does not retreat. This is a critical behavioral distinction from almost every other spider of comparable danger. The Sydney funnel web, when cornered or disturbed, rears onto its back legs, elevates its front of its body, and holds its ground. Fangs exposed. Ready. It bites repeatedly. Not a defensive single strike, but multiple sustained bites, maximizing venom delivery. And the venom it delivers contains a compound called delta-hexatoxin that attacks the human nervous system in a way that is, from a biological engineering perspective, devastatingly effective. Delta-hexatoxin floods nerve cells with sodium ions, causing them to fire continuously and without coordination, a massive simultaneous discharge of the entire peripheral nervous system. Muscles go into spasm. Glands, every gland, release their contents simultaneously. Sweating, tears, saliva, nasal secretions all in overwhelming volume. Blood pressure and heart rate spike catastrophically. The lungs begin filling with fluid as blood vessels become permeable from the systemic shock. In a child, severe envenomation can cause death in as little as 15 minutes. Before antivenom was developed in 1981, 13 human deaths were confirmed in the medical literature, and researchers believe the true historical toll was considerably higher, given inconsistent historical attribution of deaths to spider bites. Since 1981, not a single person in Australia has died from a funnel web bite. The antivenom works. But the spider hasn't changed. It's still out there in Sydney's gardens, still rearing up, still uninterested in backing down. Now we travel. We leave Australia entirely and fly to South America, to the Colombian Pacific lowlands, to a stretch of humid, green-dark rainforest where the air smells of orchids and wet soil, and the calls of 100 bird species layer over each other in the canopy. On the forest floor, hopping between roots and leaf litter with what can only be described as cheerful energy, is an animal you could cup in both hands. It weighs less than a small apple. It is, by any aesthetic measure, breathtaking. Brilliant golden yellow, some individuals shading into orange or pale green, with fine black markings that make it look like a tiny living jewel dropped into the undergrowth. It is the golden poison dart frog, Phyllobates terribilis, and its name is entirely, precisely, without any exaggeration, deserved. The golden poison dart frog is the most toxic vertebrate animal on Earth. A single adult frog carries enough batrachotoxin in its skin glands to kill approximately 10 to 20 adult humans. Estimates vary by study, but no serious researcher disputes the order of magnitude. Crucially, you do not need to be bitten. You do not need to eat it. You need to touch it. The toxin absorbs through intact, unbroken human skin. A frog the size of a strawberry picked up with bare hands can deliver a lethal dose through palm contact alone. Indigenous Embera people of Colombia have known this for centuries. They use these frogs to poison blowgun darts, the practice that gives the entire family of poison dart frogs their common name. A single frog provides enough venom for dozens of darts, each capable of killing a large mammal within minutes. Batrachotoxin is a steroidal alkaloid that permanently locks open sodium channels in nerve and muscle cell membranes, preventing the channels from closing after activation, causing a sustained, unrelenting electrical discharge throughout the nervous system and musculature simultaneously. Every muscle fires and cannot relax. The heart fibrillates and stops. There is no antidote. There has never been an antidote developed for batrachotoxin. If a lethal dose enters your system, modern medicine cannot reverse it. Treatment is supportive only, managing symptoms while hoping the dose was sublethal. What makes this toxin additionally fascinating, and what genuinely surprised researchers when first discovered, is that the frogs don't produce it themselves. In captivity, fed on commercial crickets and mealworms, golden poison dart frogs raised away from their natural rainforest diet gradually lose their toxicity over several generations. The batrachotoxin comes from specific beetles and mites in their wild diet, which themselves bioaccumulate the compound from particular plant sources. The frog is a concentrator, a living biological amplifier, assembling a weapon from the scattered chemistry of an entire rainforest ecosystem. Remove it from that ecosystem, and the weapon disappears. And now, something that might be the single most alarming creature in this entire story. Not because it carries the most toxic venom, but because of the combination of what it looks like, where it lives, and what its bite does before you even know you've been bitten. The blue-ringed octopus, genus Hapaloclina, 4 species, is found in tidal pools and shallow reef environments across the Pacific and Indian Oceans, from southern Japan down through Australia to South Africa. The largest species reaches 20 centimeters tip to tip. The smallest barely exceeds the diameter of a golf ball. At rest in their default state, these animals are a relatively unremarkable brownish yellow, mottled, cryptic, easily overlooked in a tidal pool. Tourists walk past them, children peer at them, people pick them up, and then something happens. Across the animal's entire body, simultaneously, dozens of rings appear. Vivid, electric, iridescent blue, shimmering with a quality of light that has no analog in the man-made world. Pulsing, shifting, heartbreakingly beautiful, and absolutely, unambiguously lethal as a signal. That display is a warning. The sincerest, most direct warning in the natural world. It means, I am about to kill you. Please put me down. The blue-ringed octopus produces tetrodotoxin, the same compound found in pufferfish, not through its own biochemistry, but via bacteria in its salivary glands, and the toxin permeates every tissue in the animal's body. Its beak is small, and the bite at the moment of contact is often completely painless. Victims frequently report not feeling it happen at all. A small red mark, a minor scratch, nothing alarming. 10 minutes later, the paralysis begins. It starts peripherally and moves inward. The diaphragm, the muscle that drives breathing, stops. The victim is fully, completely conscious, aware of everything happening, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to communicate. The brain continues to function normally while the body goes silent around it. Without immediate, sustained artificial respiration, maintained until the toxin metabolizes, which can take 4 to 6 hours, the victim dies of respiratory failure while fully awake. There is no antivenom. There is no pharmacological intervention that accelerates clearance of tetrodotoxin from the body. The only treatment is mechanical. Keep the lungs moving until the poison is gone. And you have to start within minutes of respiratory arrest because brain damage from oxygen deprivation begins in 4 to 6 minutes and becomes irreversible shortly after. Globally, roughly 3 people die from blue-ringed octopus bites in recorded years, a number that almost certainly undercounts unreported incidents in remote reef communities across the Indo-Pacific. Tetrodotoxin itself deserves a moment of specific focus because it is one of the most extraordinary compounds in biological chemistry. It is approximately 1,200 times more toxic than cyanide by weight. The human lethal dose is somewhere between 1 and 2 milligrams, less than a grain of sand. It has no antidote. It works by binding to voltage-gated sodium channels in nerve membranes with a specificity and affinity that organic chemists marvel at, essentially slipping into the channel like a key into a lock and sitting there, immovable, blocking all electrical conduction. The result is a complete selective shutdown of the peripheral nervous system while the brain continues to function. In Japan, where pufferfish is prepared as the delicacy fugu, licensed chefs train for a minimum of 3 years and must pass government examinations before being legally permitted to prepare it. The liver and ovaries of pufferfish contain tetrodotoxin at concentrations so extreme that a sliver the size of a rice grain can be lethal. Approximately 4 to 6 people die from improperly prepared fugu in Japan every year. Despite all of these precautions, the demand for the experience, the slight numbness on the lips from trace exposure, the thrill, remains. People continue to eat something that can kill them in minutes, prepared by experts who have dedicated years to learning how not to kill them. This tells you something about human beings. Now, we need to cross the world again. We go to North Africa and the Middle East, to the sand and rock deserts from Morocco across to Iran, to landscapes that are beautiful in the abstract and lethal in the specific. Here, in the dry scrubland and rocky desert terrain of one of the most politically complex regions on Earth, lives the animal that toxinologists refer to as the most dangerous scorpion in the world, Laeris quinquestriatus, the death stalker. It's about 10 centimeters long, slightly larger than your palm. Pale yellow, almost golden, which makes it extraordinarily difficult to see against sandy terrain. Fast, faster than most people expect a scorpion to be. And carrying a venom that is a masterwork of biochemical complexity. A cocktail of neurotoxic proteins that simultaneously disrupt sodium, potassium, and chloride ion channels across the nervous system, triggering a systemic assault that begins with immediate, excruciating pain at the sting site and escalates through fever, tachycardia, hypertension, pulmonary edema, and in the most severe cases, seizures and cardiac arrest. In healthy adults, the death stalker sting is rarely fatal with prompt treatment, but in children under 12 and in elderly individuals, mortality rates without antivenom approach 40% in some documented regional studies. And in large parts of the death stalker's range, rural Morocco, remote areas of Egypt, rural Iran and Iraq, antivenom is not reliably available. The nearest hospital with appropriate treatment may be hours away on poor roads. This is not a theoretical problem. Scorpion envenomation in North Africa and the Middle East kills somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 people every year, by conservative estimates, with children constituting the majority of fatalities. It is a silent crisis, concentrated in communities with limited access to medical infrastructure, that receives a fraction of the international health attention it deserves. But the death stalker has a secret life that most people never hear about. Its venom, specifically a protein component called chlorotoxin, binds with extraordinary selectivity to glioma cells, the cells that form glioblastoma multiforme, one of the most aggressive and treatment-resistant forms of brain cancer. Not to healthy brain tissue, not to other tumor types, to glioma cells with a specificity that looks, in the biochemical literature, almost designed. Researchers at the University of Washington and other institutions have developed a fluorescent compound called tumor paint, chlorotoxin attached to a light-emitting molecule, that can be injected before brain surgery, causing tumor tissue to literally glow under specific light wavelengths while leaving healthy tissue dark. The surgical implication is profound. Neurosurgeons operating to remove brain tumors currently face one of the hardest challenges in surgery, which is distinguishing the boundary between tumor and healthy brain tissue in real time. Tumor paint may allow them to see that boundary with a clarity that was previously impossible. The scorpion that kills in the desert is teaching us how to operate on the most complex organ in the human body. The Indian red scorpion, Hottentotta tamilis, takes a different kind of record from the death stalker. Not the most toxic venom, but the highest confirmed human fatality rate of any scorpion species, driven primarily by where it lives. Unlike the death stalker's desert habitat, the Indian red scorpion has adapted to agricultural land, suburban gardens, and the interior of human homes across India, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. It lives with people. It enters houses through gaps in walls and floors. It hides in shoes, in clothing left on the floor, under furniture. In some rural districts of Maharashtra and Gujarat in India, scorpion envenomation has been identified as a leading cause of childhood mortality in specific villages, a statistic that is simultaneously heartbreaking and almost surreal to contemplate. The venom causes severe cardiovascular toxicity, pulmonary edema, hypertension crisis, and acute heart failure. Without antivenom, fatality rates in children in some studies exceed 40%. With antivenom administered promptly in a clinical setting, survival rates are dramatically better. The problem, as with so many entries on this list, is geography. Antivenom exists. Getting it to a child who was stung in a rural village at 2 a.m, in a region with poor roads and limited emergency medical services, in time to make a difference, that is where lives are lost. Now, let's talk about a creature that rewrites what you think you know about where danger hides. The Brazilian wandering spider, Phoeneutria nigriventer, is one of the most aggressive, most widely distributed, and most pharmacologically interesting venomous spiders on Earth. Unlike web-building spiders that stay near their silk structures, Phoeneutria wanders. It hunts at night, moving through forest, through agricultural land, through the banana and cocoa plantations of Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, pursuing prey actively and aggressively. And it ends up in places that should, by any reasonable expectation, be free of lethal spiders. In the United Kingdom, in Canada, in Germany, in the United States, produce workers in grocery warehouses and supermarkets have found Brazilian wandering spiders in shipments of bananas, alive, inside sealed boxes, having traveled thousands of miles in refrigerated cargo containers, an animal capable of killing a human being, discovered in a produce aisle by someone reaching for fruit. The venom contains a complex of proteins designated PHTX3, which interfere with ion channel function in a way that produces the most severe pain response of any spider envenomation documented in the medical literature. Victims consistently describe it as worse than broken bones, worse than burns, worse than anything they have previously experienced. The pain is immediate and total. Beyond the acute pain, the venom causes cardiovascular instability, hypertension, heart rate irregularities, and in severe cases, pulmonary edema and cardiovascular failure. Children are most vulnerable, and Brazil records thousands of Phenutria bites per year, making it one of the most significant causes of spider-related medical emergencies in the world. There is one additional deeply strange pharmacological effect that the venom produces in male victims: sustained, painful priapism, a result that has led, with the peculiar logic that characterizes medical research, to serious investigation of venom components as potential treatments for erectile dysfunction. A pharmaceutical company in Brazil has been researching a synthetic compound derived from Phenutria venom for exactly this application. Nature's pharmacy continues to deliver surprises through the most unexpected doors. And now we reach the eighth, the one I told you about at the very beginning. The one that made scientists check their results 3 times. The one that, by every law of biology, as it was understood before its discovery, simply should not exist. You have been waiting for this. Here it is. The platypus. I know, I hear you. You're sitting there thinking, the platypus? The duck-billed, egg-laying, beaver-tailed Australian absurdity? That is your most unexpected entry on a list of deadly venomous creatures? Yes. Exactly. Because the platypus is a mammal, and mammals are not venomous. This is not a minor exception or an edge case. It is a foundational principle of vertebrate biology, backed by the entire evolutionary history of the mammalian class. Reptiles are venomous. Fish can be venomous. Some amphibians produce powerful skin toxins, but mammals do not have venom. The biochemical machinery for producing and delivering venom simply does not exist in the mammalian toolkit, except that it does, in the platypus, and in a handful of closely related monotremes. And when researchers first sequenced the venom proteins of the platypus spur gland in the late 20th century, they found something that stopped the analysis cold. The male platypus carries a hollow keratinous spur on each hind ankle, connected by a duct to a venom gland in the upper thigh. During breeding season, the gland becomes maximally active. The spur can deliver a sting, typically in a grappling, wrestling context during competition with other males, that has been documented in human victims as producing pain of such extraordinary intensity that it became a landmark case in pain medicine. The first well-documented human case, recorded by an Australian naturalist in the early 19th century, described pain equivalent to hundreds of simultaneous wasp stings, escalating continuously for 3 days without relief. More recent cases, there are only a small number in the medical literature, mostly involving researchers handling animals, describe pain that does not respond to morphine. This is not a clinical curiosity. Morphine is one of the most potent analgesics in medical use, and the platypus venom produces a pain state that it cannot touch. The venom contains a suite of proteins called defensin-like peptides that appear to have evolved completely independently from similar structures in other venomous animals, a remarkable example of convergent evolution at the molecular level. It also contains a unique compound, OVCNP, a C-type natriuretic peptide found only in platypus venom, that is, structurally unlike any venom protein found in any other animal. One documented victim, a researcher stung during a field study in 2020, reported residual hypersensitivity and pain in the affected hand, persisting for more than 4 months after the initial sting. 4 months from an animal that most of the world considers the charming, eccentric mascot of Australian wildlife. The venom is not lethal to healthy adult humans, but that description, not lethal to healthy adults, is doing significant rhetorical work here, because the pain it produces, the duration of that pain, and the complete failure of standard analgesic protocols to manage it make it one of the most medically remarkable envenomations on Earth. Researchers studying the platypus venom proteins have identified structural similarities to insulin-like growth factors, immune defense peptides, and compounds found in snake and spider venoms, all assembled independently, from scratch, in a mammal that looks like it was designed by a committee working from contradictory briefs. The platypus should not have venom. Everything we thought we knew about mammalian biology said it couldn't. And yet here it is, with a sting that sends morphine to the sidelines and keeps pain researchers genuinely occupied decades after its initial characterization. What connects all 8 of these creatures? The box jellyfish and the erukanji, the inland taipan and the blue-ringed octopus, the deathstalker scorpion and the golden poison dart frog, the Brazilian wandering spider and the impossible venomous platypus, is not simply danger. It is time. Each one of these animals represents an unbroken line of survival stretching back millions, in some cases, hundreds of millions of years. The box jellyfish's lineage predates the existence of fish. The scorpion's body plan has been essentially unchanged since the Devonian period, 430 million years ago, when the land was still being colonized by the first terrestrial animals. These are not evolutionary experiments. These are evolutionary solutions, answers to problems of survival that were so effective, so comprehensively correct, that they have persisted through every mass extinction, every climate shift, every reshaping of continents and oceans that this planet has undergone. And almost every compound on this list is now the subject of serious pharmaceutical research. The chlorotoxin from a deathstalker scorpion is in clinical trials for brain cancer surgery. Tetrodotoxin from blue-ringed octopus and pufferfish is being investigated as an ultrapotent surgical anesthetic for patients with chronic pain resistant to opioids. Batrachotoxin from golden dart frogs is illuminating the biochemistry of cardiac arrhythmia disorders. Compounds from cone snail venom, a group that deserves their own full story, because there are approximately 700 species of cone snail and their venoms together represent one of the largest untapped pharmacological libraries in nature, have already produced a licensed medication called Prialt, used for patients with intractable chronic pain who no longer respond to morphine. PHTX3 from the Brazilian wandering spider is being investigated for erectile dysfunction treatment. The platypus's defensin-like peptides are giving researchers a new window into convergent evolution at the molecular level, with potential implications for antibiotic development. The most dangerous substances on Earth are also among the most medically valuable, and we are only beginning to understand why. We started this story with a touch lighter than a feather in warm vacation water, with 4 minutes on a clock, with an animal that weighs less than a grape and carries enough venom to kill 60 people. We traveled through Australian scrubland and Colombian rainforest and North African desert and Sydney suburbs. We met animals that kill with crystalline efficiency, animals that produce pain science cannot yet fully explain, and one animal that should, by every rule in the textbook, not be venomous at all, and every single one of them is out there right now, living its life in the spaces between our awareness, carrying biochemical innovations that 4 billion years of evolution built one generation at a time. There are 200,000 venomous species on this planet. We have studied 2% of them. The other 98% are waiting. Some of them are carrying compounds that will become the medicines of the next century. Some are carrying things we haven't even developed the conceptual framework to understand yet. And some of them, somewhere in a tidal pool or a suburban garden or a rainforest floor, are carrying something that, when we finally find it and analyze it and check the results 3 times because we can't believe what we're seeing, will make everything on this list look ordinary. What was the creature on this list that surprised you the most? The one you weren't expecting to see? leave it in the comments. I read everyone, and the conversations down there are consistently the best part of making these videos. If this story gave you something, a new way of seeing the world, a fact you're going to tell someone tomorrow, a reason to look twice at something you've always walked past, then you're exactly the person this channel exists for. The world is stranger and more astonishing than we give it credit for. Every single day, we'll be here to keep showing you.